Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
Garret Graves has been in Congress for just over 16 months and has emerged as a leading voice for traffic and infrastructure improvements in the Capital Region. Congressman Garret Graves joins us when we return on the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
In Baton Rouge, see your Good Neighbor State Farm agent Brady Flavin for your insurance and financial needs.
For over a quarter century, Kelly's has operated with honesty, integrity, and above all, safety. Kelly's features a fleet of quality equipment operated by dedicated, safety-minded employees skilled in land clearing, above-ground right-of-way maintenance, vegetation control, station yard and manned facility maintenance, above-ground pipeline support, and more. Kelly's Industrial Services, where pipeline right-of-way maintenance gets done right.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to welcome to the show Congressman Garret Graves, 6th District of Louisiana. Buddy, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Glad you're here. I want to spend a little time going backwards. You were elected about 16 months ago, been in office about 16 months. You defeated one of the two best-known political figures in our state's history. Talk a little bit about that campaign, that election. I know it was your first. What'd you learn from that?
Tim, it was really just an extraordinary experience. First of all, the whole thing was surreal. I remember toward the end of the campaign, we had a debate during the runoff, and it was just us and Edwin Edwards. And I remember driving to the debate and just thinking in the car, I can't even believe I'm here. I mean, just like pinching myself. He was governor when I was a kid. Candidly, I kind of thought he was a little bit older then, I guess just comparative to my age. But I also want to say that, believe it or not, after all he's been through, I do have respect for him. Incredibly bright guy, incredibly witty guy. Memory is amazing, and we do stay in touch. But so that was one thing. Secondly, when you do campaigns, you go to every nook and cranny of an area. And growing up in South Louisiana, I thought I knew this place backwards and forwards, and I found I knew it pretty well. But you end up going into people's homes and going into businesses and into back rooms that you never knew existed. And I really enjoyed getting to kind of expand the network of friends and learning more about South Louisiana and all the great things we had to offer. And then lastly, I think one of the other kind of takeaways from the campaign is, you always have these consultants and they're telling you need to do this, you need to say this, and really just the thing about just saying what you think and feel.
Being yourself.
It's it,
right.
Because trying to say things that you don't believe in, it's just, it doesn't come across as being honest, and it just seems disingenuous. And so, really a lot of lessons, and I actually enjoyed the process.
Now, we mentioned that you've been in office about 16 months, right? So big picture, what's your experience been like in D.C.?
Yeah, one of the first ones that comes to mind, candidly, is frustrating. You can look at a lot of different metrics, and you can actually show how this Congress has been one of the more effective Congresses in the last few decades, believe it or not. But the key thing is, when you look at the problems we're having across the country, the pace of resolution, the pace of solutions needs to be exponentially greater than it is now. And so, I'm going to go back and say that a lot of good relationships, met a lot of good people that I think are really well-intentioned. And I'll tell you, it kind of disrupted one of my kind of beliefs, or maybe some stereotypes that are out there, is that people that have been there for 10 years or so, they're already kind
jaded.
of yeah.
Right.
But I'll tell
co-opted
you,
by the system.
Absolutely. But there's not a standard formula. I've met people who've been there for 20 years or more that I think are just as fresh and aggressive about solutions as they probably were on their first day. And candidly, I've met some people that in our freshman class that I think probably have already kind of expired their usefulness.
You think about that gridlock and that dysfunction, and one of the, I guess, things that anyone who is in Congress from either side of the aisle has to balance is this idea of standing on principle, where you need to stand on principle, but having the willingness and the ability to reach across the aisle and compromise to find solutions. Talk about your experience there.
Look, a lot of people go up there, and one of the things that's really been remarkable about being there for the amount of time that I have is just the lack of understanding that some people have on issues when they're voting for them, which is frustrating to deal with. When you know that there's a right policy solution, but people, just because their party's saying one thing or another, they're voting a certain way. Compromise is viewed as a bad word, and you have to be real careful about how and when you use it. The bottom line is that, an analogy is football, and you're not going to get a touchdown every time. And so sometimes a 2-yard run is actually progress that you need to recognize. Now, if there's very little defense on the field and you're looking at a 2-yard run as a goal, that's inappropriate, if you can hit a touchdown. But you've got to make decisions based upon the field. And in some cases, if you can make progress on an issue, you need to go ahead and take that win and then immediately start and say, okay, now we need to move the ball 4 yards down the field. And so, I've tried to develop some personal relationship with people, other members of both parties, to where I can sit down with them and talk to them about issues and try and gain their support on things that are important to South Louisiana as a result of that relationship.
Let's talk about the leadership in the House, because Paul Ryan now is in as Speaker. Steve Scalise, Majority Whip, obviously with his Louisiana ties, being the congressman from New Orleans. Talk about the leadership in the House and how things may be different as we go forward in terms of the ability to get things done.
Yeah. Look, first of all, I remember telling my wife about 3 months into the job, I said, there's no way that John Boehner survives the year. I just, after experiencing his leadership, while he's a very nice guy personally, his leadership style couldn't be more outdated and more out of touch with, I think, the people of South Louisiana and the people around the country. Let me make a quick note about Scalise. Having someone in leadership, having a small delegation like we do with only 6 members in the House of Representatives out of 435, having Scalise in the leadership position is a big win. It allows us to punch above our weight for Louisiana, and that's been fantastic for us. The leadership, we now have Paul Ryan in there, going back to the Speaker position when Boehner stepped down. And I think that Paul has his finger on the pulse much better than Boehner did. And I think his leadership style is one much more of a bottom-up type approach than a top-down, much more inclusive, much more policy-focused. Let's talk about what it is we're going to stand for, what are our policy solutions, what are our goals. And so I've enjoyed that. But look, being Speaker, being leader is a very challenging situation. I certainly haven't agreed with everything that he's done and said, but I do think that it's much more refreshing seeing Paul Ryan's leadership style as compared to previous.
About 30 seconds left in this segment, Garrett. That's a critical thing, right? Is that it really is about what we want to be for. I think for far too long, our party, the Republican Party, has been the party of what we're against. 15, 20 seconds. How important is it for this party to stand for something, be for something?
It's absolutely critical, and it's very easy to always be on defense with this president. But the reality is we have got to present a clear vision. The city on the hill that Reagan talked about. We've got to present that clear vision on what it is we stand for, what it is we're focused on, and where we're headed.
I want to take a break and come back and talk about your committee assignments and some of the things you're trying to accomplish. We're visiting with Congressman Garret Graves, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Spadel's Florist was founded over 30 years ago. From my mom's kitchen, we have grown into one of the largest florists in this area. There's a sense in our community that you stick together, good times or bad, and oil and gas is part of that family. They're my neighbors, they're my customers, they're the person I'm sitting next to at church. If oil and gas is doing well, all of our businesses are doing well. We are Louisiana Oil and Gas.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
What if I said that the American dream is alive and well, and that it exists for anyone willing to build it? That the power of a nation does not reside in its monuments, but in the hearts and minds of those who built them, and that the country's greatest heroes also wear hard hats. In today's America, it's not enough to dream about the future. You have to build it. Build your future at byf.org.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Our guest is Congressman Garret Graves. Congressman, you serve on two very important committees, not just to the Congress, but to the state of Louisiana. You serve on natural resources and you serve on transportation and infrastructure. Let's talk about some of your work there and some of your early successes.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two committees, like you said, I mean, just intimately tied to the economy, to the people of South Louisiana. Transportation Committee, all traditional means of transportation, but also the rivers, levees, wetlands, FEMA, pipelines, a lot of things that are important to the state. And then natural resources, everything from fishing and hunting to energy production. So again,
two ideas, right? Fishing, hunting is natural, and energy production, two critically important things for our state, right?
You take care of 90% of the population right,
right
there. So what we did is, first of all, on the Transportation Committee, the traffic problems here are just extraordinary. We fought to get on that committee. We're successful in getting on. One of the only freshmen named to the conference committee to negotiate the final transportation bill between the House and the Senate. We were able to negotiate a $500 million increase for the state of Louisiana, able to establish this year a $1.3 billion grant program for mega projects. That'll continue on at various levels in the future. Added an innovation title to allow us to take iPhones and sync them up with traffic signals so you know how fast to drive, when the light's going to turn green. I mean, just really advancing, taking several steps forward in regard to advancing the efficiency of our transportation system and starting to address our traffic. We were able to pass a bill now signed into law that will expand for another 5 years a coastal wetlands program, providing the state somewhere between $70 and $100 million a year for coastal restoration efforts. In December, passed a bill that expands the state control of red snapper fishery out to 9 miles. Been a very contentious issue across the Gulf Coast. We've had a number of regulatory wins, pulling back the reins on the federal government in regard to the regulatory agenda they're pushing forward, which causes additional hidden taxes on American families. And one of the other big issues that we've been spending a lot of time on is lifting the oil export ban, which we were able to do a few months ago, working with a number of other members of Congress, including our own Congressman Scalise, lifting that to where Louisiana can actually export our oil and not just Iran exporting their oil. So good news there.
You've been in the news a little bit recently about a situation with Puerto Rico. Give our viewers an overview of that and tell us what's going on.
You know, it's an issue that a lot of people probably wouldn't be paying attention to were it not for some ads that people are running trying to, I think, deceive the public a little bit. Bottom line is we shouldn't be bailing out Puerto Rico as a result of their irresponsible financial decisions over the last 10 or 12 years. The territory has racked up a debt of about $72 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, $72 billion for a territory of population smaller than the state of Louisiana, and their efforts to try and bail them out. And bottom line is we shouldn't be putting $1 of federal taxpayer funds to bail out the territory for their irresponsible practices. We're instead looking at legislation that would establish a financial control board similar that was done to Washington, D.C., put them on a more sustainable financial track, help to reinvigorate their economy, and get them back on their own 2 feet using their own resources. You know, a lot of people don't realize Puerto Ricans don't pay federal income taxes. So to take our federal income taxes from Louisiana and divert them over there when we have all the extraordinary needs here is just crazy. And I'm totally opposed to any effort to take our federal taxpayer dollars and bail them out.
Glad you had a chance to clarify that. But let's talk about the needs we have right here in Louisiana, particularly in this greater Baton Rouge area. You have emerged, as we said in the show open, as really the leading voice for fixing these traffic and infrastructure issues that have plagued us in this region for years and years and years. So I start with that question. We know intuitively how bad it is when we sit in traffic every day, and anyone who works or lives in this area sits in traffic at some point during their day. How did we get here?
You know, Tim, I think a lot of people, because of the slow growth in traffic and the problem that has, you know, evolved over literally decades, a lot of people just have kind of come to accept it. And I think taking a fresh look at it, and we did, you know, recognizing for one study shows this region is having the worst traffic in the nation for a mid-sized region. Another study says the third worst. Regardless, it's the worst traffic in the state of Louisiana. It's been a lack of planning and a lack of resources over the last 30 or 40 years. And it's completely unacceptable. I mean, there's little that is as pervasive in terms of affecting our community as traffic problems. Whether you're trying to go to the grocery store, bring your child to school, go to the hospital, go fishing. No matter what it is, it affects you. And the number of people I've spoken to telling me stories about trying to get their kids or their parents or what have you to a hospital because of emergency conditions and unable to do it because of back up on the interstate. I couldn't even tell you the number of people that have said it. And so we have been stepping out and really calling to question the status quo, looking at fundamental changes. You know, I'll tell you one thing that's really frustrating. Back in 1989, there was a 4-cent a gallon gas tax that was added. And that we recently learned that it's going to be extended all the way to probably 2050. It was supposed to be a 25 or 30-year program. The dollars that we're paying in this region are all paying for projects outside of this region. There are no projects in this 5-parish area. And so we've got to just undo a lot of the stupid things that were done. We've got to depoliticize the decisions on where transportation or traffic solutions are funded, and really just, again, get politics out of the process.
Well, and that really is the biggest detriment that we've seen in terms of why that existing 4-cent gas tax hasn't been used or utilized more in this region. It's because we have not been able to take the politics out of the discussion, and regions that have been able to get the politics out and agree on solutions, we've got about a minute left, they've been able to get funding and do major projects. That's what we've got to do.
We have funded projects in the state of Louisiana for areas that have so little merit in regard to their projects, while you have the area that has the most merit, that has the greatest need in the state, and we haven't received our share of funding. And so we've been working on the 5 parishes with the parish leaders, mayors, business community leaders, getting them all to work together to agree that we're going to move on a merit-based approach where you get best bang for the buck, best cost to benefit ratio. That's where we're going to dedicate our dollars, and we've got to get the state to work with us cooperatively on that and depoliticize this process as well.
Take a break. I want to come back and talk about some of the specific things you want to work on relative to this traffic, and more importantly, how quickly can we get it done and how are we going to pay for it? We're visiting with Congressman Garret Graves, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
For more than 20 years, the TJC Group has been helping companies assess their training needs and to develop programs that improve the effectiveness and productivity of their teams.
Training doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. Let us put our experience and expertise to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
Keene Miller traces its roots to the dawn of the petrochemical industry in Louisiana. As the legal needs of the sector grew, our firm emerged as a leader in environmental law, economic development, real estate, employment, utilities regulations, and more. Today, These same clients and those new to our state continue to rely upon the firm and its attorneys for creative ideas, practical advice, and Louisiana know-how. Industrial strength law. Learn more at KeenMiller.com.
Tim Johnson here for Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. With some of the most knowledgeable and hardest working medical professionals in Louisiana and 8 convenient locations in Greater Baton Rouge, Gulf Coast provides injury management, physical exams, medical surveillance, and substance abuse testing. Once you know the folks at Gulf Coast, you'll realize they are your best option to protect your safety record and your bottom line. Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. Ride the wave to safety.
What if I said that whatever good things you build you? And that in this economy, sweat never loses its value. What if I said that there isn't a challenge in the world too great for a craft professional with the right tools, and that the steps that lead from where you are to where you want to be can only be built by you? Build your future at byf.org.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Good conversation with our guest, Congressman Garret Graves. We started talking in the last segment about these traffic problems in the Greater Baton Rouge area, and really been a focus, one of the primary focuses that you've had. You're working with a group, and you mentioned the engagement of business and industry, Capital Region Industry for Sustainable Infrastructure Solutions. We've talked about it often on this show. Had Tom Muir on, we've had Scott Kirkpatrick on. Let's talk about some of the specifics that you want to see, the specific projects, and then we'll talk a little bit about how quickly we can get them underway and how we pay for them.
Tim, look, first of all, I don't think I'm the one who should be selecting the projects. Crisis did a good job in actually putting a merit-based approach together, looking at dollars spent versus time saved in traffic. We spend an average of 47 hours a year extra time sitting in traffic in this region, 47 hours above the national average. I mean, that's crazy.
Think about that. That's a whole week of work, productivity lost.
Productivity lost, spending time with your family, spending time doing the things that you love. That's a big chunk of time. And so Crisis did a good job looking at merit-based approaches. So we've been working with them trying to build upon that to look at short, mid, and long-term solutions. I think there's no reason why we couldn't have the Washington Street exit area fixed within the next 2 years. We've been working with the state on that, identifying funding streams. Again, we negotiated a $500 million increase for the state of Louisiana. We have got to stop spending money on projects that don't have merit and diverting funds for political purposes is the bottom line. I think when you look at the studies and you look at the merit, a new crossing in the Mississippi River is probably 20 years overdue. I think that projects like upgrading I-10 and I-12 are critical. LA-1 on the west side of the river, particularly that entrance ramp. All these projects.
Highway 30, doing some work.
Highway 30 from Gonzales all the way into downtown Baton Rouge needs to be upgraded, more of a freeway type status in some areas, I think is important. Upgrading 190, connecting Walker and Gonzales. I mean, look, we can sit here and discuss billions of dollars worth of projects that have merit and have high cost to benefit ratios based upon preliminary information. Bottom line is we've got to use the dollars that we have in an efficient manner. That includes the CATS, the transit system, and stop driving empty buses around. We've got to look at the role of streetcars and commuter rails and other things that have a separate pot of money under federal law and look at the best use of those dollars and how they can complement our objectives in this area.
Well, and you have, and rightfully so, been very outspoken on things like CATS and some of these projects. But here's the thing, right, is that we've heard and we've experienced these issues, these traffic issues for years and years and years. You mentioned maybe the Washington Street exit being something that we might be able to get accomplished in the next couple of years. How do we expedite the remainder of these high priority, high value projects, and how do we pay for them?
Number one, you've got to get everyone in this region to agree to this merit-based system to where we have consensus and stop all the political fighting. Some of the people in this region won't even meet. We try to call a meeting. They wouldn't even come in the same room together because of personalities. This isn't about personalities or personal feelings. This is about the region. It's about people doing their jobs and making sure that we're advancing the priorities of this region, what people are telling us to do. Number two, we've got to get those dollars back in this region, including the 4 cent gas tax, that we should not be spending it to pay for other regions' projects and none here from 1989 to 2050. That's crazy. We've got to really expedite the concurrently short, mid, and long-term projects and stop just looking at, oh, we're going to put $10 million here. We need to be looking at what we can be doing right now to begin expediting a bridge across the river, which is going to be a multi-year project. So I think doing separate categories of short, mid, and long-term projects, moving them all concurrently, pulling the funds together in this region that we're paying and focusing on our priorities and not paying for political priorities in other parts of the state are all going to be important part of the solution.
It's critically important to the economic growth and the economic health of this region that we begin to find solutions, not just find them, but implement them, get them done, and I know you're going to continue to push on that. We've got about 2.5 minutes left in the show. I want to hit on a couple of topics pretty quickly. I know you're following the legislature. This governor inherited a fiscal mess in this state. Working to try to go through it, business community concerned about increased taxes and their burden. Give us 30 seconds on your thoughts on what's going on in Louisiana.
Look, I worked in state government for a little while, and I'll tell you that there is much disparity among state agencies in regard to their efficiency. I think some agencies that have been around for a long period of time probably picked up bad habits over the years, started programs decades ago that made sense then that don't make sense now. Bottom line is taking more of a zero-based budgeting approach where you start from zero and make people earn the dollars in their budget, number one. Number two, having approximately 75% of the state budget locked up in state law dedications and constitutional dedications. I think that the governor and the legislature need to be working to unlock all of those funds, taking a fresh look at those and determining if their priorities today, continuing to try to balance the state's budget on the backs of healthcare and education is simply unsustainable, and it allows you to continue to waste tax dollars in other regions. I saw a presentation by LBIS and others that said that the state of Louisiana already spends more money per capita than the southern average. I'm not sure that we actually have a revenue problem. I think we've got bigger problems on the spending side than some people realize.
It's really about priorities and, as you say, zero-based budgeting, funding those things that mean the most adequately and demanding excellence from them. 30 seconds, it's hard to believe that you're already facing re-election. Give us a few seconds on your re-election campaign and what's going on there.
You know, there have been shows on 60 Minutes and others saying that people are spending 30 hours a week and others on raising funds and re-election. And, you know, look, I'll tell you, I think the best thing you can do, and I've been in one term, so I'm not an expert, but I think the best thing you can do to get reelected, if that's what you want to do, is do a good job. And so we're trying to stay in touch through Facebook. We do Q&A sessions, teletown halls, town hall meetings, and I think the more you make yourself accessible and engage people, then you don't need to go out there and do campaigning and worry about campaigning. And you know, we plan on running again and maybe even a third time, and we'll see. I think as long as we feel like we can be effective and the feedback we're getting is positive, then we're going to, you know, run for re-election, and looking forward to the opportunity to represent this area for another 2 years.
Well, I can tell you that the feedback and the buzz about Garret Graves is really, really good. I appreciate the good work you're doing, and I actually appreciate you being with us today on the show, buddy.
You bet. Appreciate the
We'll have you back sometime soon. Thanks. Keep up the good work. Thank you. That's a wrap, guys. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.